Hey guys, Masi's here from Zelda Dungeon, and welcome to the latest collection video. This time around we are looking at The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. In particular, this is the original release in 1992, and the cover in general is pretty plain and simple. It's got the a Legend of Zelda logo, the name of the game, and just the generic colored background. And a few things, back in the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of times all you had to go by when purchasing a game was the box, the back, the pictures, the little description, and that was it. I mean, there was some like publications, Nintendo Power, and Game Informer was even out in the early 90s. Electronic Gaming Monthly and Game Pro. However, a lot of those, they covered games after the fact, meaning a game might come out in, say, January, and then the March and April and May issues of the magazine will cover the game. So a lot of times it was, after the fact. There were no big launch titles, like, I shouldn't say launch titles, but when a game launched, when it first released, there weren't these like big reserves and millions of copies sold in day one. That virtually did not exist until relatively recently. But so the back of the box. Venture back to Hyrule and an age of magic and heroes. The predecessors of Link and Zelda face monsters on the march when a menacing magician takes over the kingdom. Only you can prevent his evil plot from shattering the land of Hyrule. In your quest, you'll venture into twisting mazes, dungeons, palaces, and shadowy forests. Test your mettle with mighty swords and magical weapons, or heft a boulder and hurl it at your enemies. If the going gets tough, dive into a river. You can swim to escape. Learn powerful spells, locate magical artifacts, and solve the mysteries of the evil magician and the hidden realm of Hyrule. The exciting Super NES sequel to The Legend of Zelda and the Adventure of Link uses 16-bit power to create a quest so colorful and detailed, you don't just play it, you live it. Sweet. But moving on, beyond just the box, it did come with a bunch of things. Number one is the manual. And I've talked about this in my previous collection videos for the original NES games. Manuals were sweet back then, and this tradition carried on with A Link to the Past, perhaps even elaborating more. They had this extensive story within the manual, talking about the creation of Hyrule. It actually gave this huge backstory, all this official artwork, detailed paragraphs, and it was several pages long, a lot of information, and I thought this was sweet since, like, back in the day, I'd go to the video game store with, like, my mom or dad, and, we'd get the game, and, like, on the car ride home, I'd be sitting in the back seat, like, ripping open the packaging and, like, staring at the manual, reading, and, like, thinking some of the stuff was pretty cool. Nowadays, manuals kind of stink. There's really not much into it. Gives you, like, the buttons, but you virtually don't need it. But there were some other things in here. A lot of official artwork, nice screenshots. There is the, like, how to play basic stuff. But then there's, some character artwork. Much like the previous games, there's basically artwork for every single item in the game. And it's pretty good, very well done, sweet manual. Unfortunately, they sort of started going downhill after A Link to the Past. But, nice manual. Moving on, it also came with this small book. I believe this might have been not the initial run, but not certain. It came with this small Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past Top Secrets. Messages from Sahasrara. I like that name. But this little book thingy has seen better days. But basically it has basic, like, hints and tricks and such. Like, I'll just read from the back side here. Like, escaping Hyrule Castle. My path through the escape passage is blocked. Try pushing the blocks that are in your way. And it gives you, like, little tips. Where is the big key? Or, how do I beat the turtles in the Palace of Darkness? And, little tips and tricks. It's almost like an FAQ type thing. It's not really a full guide by any means. It's just like a little, in case you get stuck, top secrets. Message from Sahasrara. So that was pretty cool. In addition to that, it also came with a large fold-out map. And we saw this with the original Legend of Zelda, and this is actually something that's continued on in a bulk of Zelda games even till today. So over here is the world map. This is just the light world, not covering the dark world. It's pretty sweet, really sweet actually. I think it's really well done. And then on the back side we have basically the first 3 dungeons: the Eastern Palace, the Desert Palace, and then the Tower of Hera. So we have full maps. It's almost like a mini guide. Almost pushes you along in case you get stuck in the early portions of the game. Pretty sweet, and like I said, you still see these not often packaged with the game, but more times packaged with the strategy guide and like the Prima Games Collector's Edition and such. Pretty sweet. Moving on to just the game. The actual cartridge. The artwork on the front is just like the box art. It's the plain, like goldish, like bronzish color in the background with the logo. Pretty sweet. With the end label. You can read it. So that's A Link to the Past. A few years later, in 1996, they re-released the game actually. And it was the Player's Choice version. It has a slightly altered background. But it's virtually the same thing. The description on the back is a little bit different, and pretty much it's exactly the same. A few things about A Link to the Past. This game released, all the way back in '92 in America, and it had one of the biggest longevity of almost any game I can think of. For example, in Nintendo Power Magazine, they had the top 30 countdown, and it eventually shrunk for Super Nintendo games. And this game was #1 on the list for 3 years in a row, from 96, 97, 98, and it got featured in the Counselor's Corner and the classified information, and it got featured in Nintendo Power as late as 1999, 7 years after the game, even several years after the 64 came out. So this game had this crazy long life cycle. And then it just got released a few years after that, in the early 2000s on the Game Boy. But box is virtually the same. The game is the same. It is a re-release. It's just changed the artwork. The actual cartridge was also changed, but it's much like the box. It's basically the same game. It has the slightly different logo with the little Player's Choice medallion thing. I think this was the beginning of the Player's Choice too. I know this has become a regular thing, even with the Nintendo Wii. They have the Nintendo Selects, but I think this was one of the first games that did it. But yeah, that's The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. The 2 different versions. I should flip that over, right there. So that's going to do it for this collection video. Oh, in terms of rarity, you can actually find both of these complete in boxes. Fairly common, actually. If you eBay search it, you'll probably find one of each right now. I mean, pricing, the pricing has gone up, but it's not overwhelming. And in fact, you probably can get them, when these first came out, these were $60 a piece for Super Nintendo. Some were 50, some were even more. The prices actually now are cheaper than they used to be, based on inflation and such. But even new in their box, complete with everything, not sealed, but new with everything, you'll get them cheaper now than you did 20 years ago. So prices haven't gone up too much for these. So if you're a collector, definitely pick them up. But that's going to do it. I will see you guys next week with another collection video. Take care, guys.